Hi, and welcome to season 5 of On the Banks. I am your host, Doug Draper. I'm a graduate of the University of Kansas from 1992. As you know, On the Banks is really the only fraternity podcast where we meet brothers, we share stories, and embrace the shared values of Phi Gamma Delta. So, season 5 is going to be amazing, and we have some tremendous guests ready to join. So our first guest is a recent graduate from University of Pennsylvania from 2001, and he's doing amazing things. I was blown away by his vision, his mission, and taking things into action. So I'm very pleased to introduce everybody to Eli Moraru. How's it going, Eli? What's going on with you?
It's going well. Glad to be here today. Just quick clarification, I'm class of 2021. In 2001, I was 1 years old. But yeah, my name's Eli Moraru. I'm the co-founder and president of the Community Grocer. I was a beta Fiji at the University of Pennsylvania. I was president there for a few years and graduated in 2021. I've been working on this nonprofit with my fraternity brother, Alex Imbot, ever since. So glad to be here today.
Yeah. Well, good check on the old man here. I just mentally was saying 01, so that's awesome. And you're joining us today from Philadelphia, which is where your home is, and the community grocer. So, hey, let's jump into it real first for our audience. Like, just recap kind of what the community grocer is, so we have a baseline for our conversation.
Yeah, the Community Grocer is a nonprofit organization that is reinventing the corner store and reimagining nutritional assistance. We are going to be the first retailer through some really innovative and exciting partnerships to allow SNAP recipients or people on food stamps to utilize their benefits to walk away with a hot meal. That is in full compliance with federal policy. We're really pushing the boundaries on nutritional justice, on economic development, and really community empowerment, starting with our first location here in Southwest Philadelphia, just 20 blocks from the University of Pennsylvania and the Phi Gamma Delta chapter house.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, tell us how this all came to be, right? So you're this uh, Fiji member at University of Penn, and all of a sudden you're making waves and doing some amazing things. So, kind of take us from an undergraduate college kid all the way to what you're doing now. So, like, what's the genesis behind that? And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so originally I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and my co-founder Alex actually grew up 3 blocks from each other, but we never met until we were in Fiji. He was 2 years older than me, and it was my junior year, height of the pandemic. So we're doing online school, but I'm still living in Philly with 10 of my fraternity brothers. And Alex had just graduated during the pandemic and was doing community work out in South Philadelphia. After his senior thesis and the world ending with the pandemic, he just stuck around and he posted on his Instagram that he needed some volunteers to help support his community work and do some voter registration. And I was a political science major, so I was like, oh, this is exactly what I do. Let me come out and support. And like Alex, I showed up one day and then never left. And that led to really a year-long process of during the pandemic supporting community organizations in South Philadelphia. So we were doing everything from running youth sports leagues to clothing handouts to voter registration work, environmental justice work, and then during that pandemic, passing out these food boxes. And we were passing out government food boxes from a street corner, about 800 every Monday, rain, sleet, or snow, without a budget, without anything except for the relationships we built over the last year and just the need for food. And in Philadelphia, 1 out of 5 residents are nutrition insecure. Out of 3 residents are on SNAP benefits or food stamps. And it also has some of the highest rates of hypertension, diabetes, and diet-related disease. And during the pandemic, that's even worse. People are out of jobs, out of work. And we're passing out these food boxes. And it was excess ingredients that didn't add up to a recipe. Think potatoes, onions, apples, chicken, and yogurt. And for those 8 hours a day with the trust we had, it was understanding this wasn't a sustainable and real solution. And it was for our seniors who couldn't even lift the boxes, for kids, what's a kid going to do with a sack of potatoes? And even for the working mothers that these excess ingredients didn't add up to a recipe. And most of Philadelphia is a food desert. So to even complete that recipe, you still have to go to the grocery store, which is 2 buses away. And it was in that where we're talking with neighbors and being like, this isn't really working. What are you doing for food? And it was in that conversation and that trust, our neighbors were like, well, I'm using my double pandemic EBT or my food stamps at the corner store. And in Philadelphia, we have 2,000 independently owned corner stores that sell chips and soda at nearly a 10-to-1 ratio of anything healthy. And they're accepting food stamps for it, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And so our kids, before basketball are eating Skittles and Arizona tea. And that's what they're eating on their way to school. And it was in that just being like, is that what you're looking for? No judgment, just asking. And our neighbors with that trust we built are like, no, I wish I could have a hot, healthy meal in my neighborhood that I can use my food stamps for, but I can't. And Alex and I, as two Fiji brothers, well, why not? So we went back to campus. We start researching SNAP policy and the whole federal bill around this program, which is about $120 billion a year. And it says you can't use your benefits for anything hot or prepared with the intention of on-premise consumption, meaning somehow Skittles are eligible and those don't grow on trees, but scrambled eggs aren't. And it was in that, watching our kids have to have Skittles for breakfast instead of scrambled eggs, that we're like, let's build the dream store that our neighbors are asking for. And it was right there and then that kicked off this journey when I was a junior in college that became the Community Grocer a few years later.
That's an amazing. I got a couple questions about Skittles here, but I want to kind of rewind a little bit. What you just described is an amazing passion that started with let's register some voters during the pandemic. So I'm curious, your background, I mean, even pre-fraternity, pre-college, the whole 9 yards. I mean, what you just described is amazing, right? Have you had a propensity to just always give and have a service mindset? Talk about that, because what you just described just doesn't happen overnight in my it's a passion with your character, right? So is there talk about that when you were a little kid, like
Yeah.
how did you
I
have
mean,
this passion?
I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., in the city proper, went to public schools the whole way through. And I think it was really early on. My parents, they're entrepreneurs, but were always pushing me to give back. So whether it was like volunteering my time as a kid as a counselor at soccer camps and youth groups, or I was very politically involved in a high school. I think coming into Penn, when I applied, I thought I was going to go the political route. But really always knowing that my passion was within supporting people. And throughout college, it was very much like, how can I affect and create positive change on a group of people? And for me, is really early on. I came into college very anti-Greek life. I didn't understand it. My dad wasn't in it. My mom was, but it wasn't something I grew up with. And it was really, my freshman year, I met the Fiji brothers just at, having some lunch. And I met this group of guys who were all individually motivated for very different things. Whether, the first brother I met was building a robotic hand for people who had their limbs mutilated in a civil war down in Libya. And I was like, whoa, who are these guys who are so passionate about very different things? One guy could be doing finance, but really passionate about it, or someone, is creating this or healthcare, whatever it may be. And that was when I arrived in college. I said, okay, these are the people I want to be around. If I can be an impetus for this amazing group of young men to continue doing good, that's what I wanted to continue. So it's been something I've always been very involved with. And, when I joined Fiji, I immediately, ran to be in the philanthropy chair and eventually became president and really wanted to expand our initiatives there. And it's really cool to see, that legacy living on, where now the beta chapter, the preferred charity they give to, is the Community Grocer. And just building that legacy has been one I've always followed. It's something that had to be cultivated for sure. I think throughout college, it's easy to be like, oh, I want to go into finance and make my money. But it was really that pandemic giving me some time to sit back and say, oh, the world's kind of slowed down at this point. What do I want out of this life? And it was always to help others. So when Alex put that on his Instagram, that does anyone want to help volunteer and do voter registration, it was such a no-brainer for me at that point, where I've been stuck in the house for 6 months and here's an opportunity to get out and help people. And that really is where that journey continued for me.
Well, that's great. The happenstance, right? The chance meeting of just with the Fiji brothers at lunch, right? And it's awesome to hear that the perception of what you thought the Greek system wasn't the reality at your university, and seeing that and just taking that mindset and really going going for it and staying in. Not only were you involved outside of the fraternity, but staying involved because there is importance with philanthropy chairman and the president. So that's cool. It's really nice to hear the perception of our fraternity or fraternity in general, the Greek system, and the reality of what you experienced is different. And that's really cool. And service obviously is one of our core values. And so you guys have just taken that to the next level. So I want to pivot a little bit back to the community grocer itself, right? So you spoke about, hey, we were giving food boxes out 800 a week on Mondays, right? And it's evolved into something a lot more than that. Like, how did that happen, right? When you and I were speaking, I'm just like, okay, that takes some money, right? It takes organization. It's understanding how the process works. Because like you said, SNAP is a government program. And last time I heard is the government's kind of hard to navigate, right? So talk about how you went from food boxes on a Monday to kind of where you are now. And then we'll talk about some of the things you got going on in 25.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all started with authentic listening, right? It was leaving the Penn bubble, and entering Philadelphia for the first time. That through the community work, we really became members of the city. Which I've lived here now for 7 years, but when you start out at Penn, you're just kind of living in that bubble and listening to neighbors, and they kept saying the same things over and over again. I wish I could have a hot, healthy meal with my food stamps, and for us to just continue listening and to say, hey, let's dream together. Let's use the resources, I had as a university student with professors and funding opportunities to bring the dream store of our neighbors to life. And it was with that saying that let's bring this collective vision to reality that we started reading the Farm Bill and reading about SNAP and those 4 paragraphs I mentioned earlier to cannot use for anything hot prepared with the intention of on-premise consumption. That Alex and I were like, well, what does premise really mean? What does intention mean? And, hot was pretty easy to figure out, but those 2 ones, intentions and premise. And on the USDA website, it says you buy, we fry is illegal, meaning if I sell you a raw chicken breast and then after you purchase it, we cook it for you for free or, 75 cents, that's not legal. We know a lot of places do it, but they lose their SNAP license. And just through that research, being like, well, what about you buy, they fry? What if we sold you raw ingredients and meal kits and everything that those boxes were lacking? It's a fully prepared, ready to go ingredient kit. But knowing for on-premise consumption, you can't do it. You can't have it hot on premises. What if we split a building in half and on the back half is a culinary workforce development training kitchen where you can trade in those ingredients for one that's hot and ready. So effectively, through that trade in, you can walk away with a hot meal using your SNAP benefits. And we had that idea, just listening to neighbors. And to bring it to reality took a lot of time. The first one was cold email to the Harvard Food Law Policy Clinic, where we said, hey, we have this idea. Do you think this is legal? And they gave us some free pro bono lawyers for about 2 months and then a memo that said, go for it. It wasn't a full green light, but it was enough for us to get started. And we took that idea in 2022. We won the Penn President's Sustainability Prize, so my senior year, which is $100,000 and a $50,000 living stipend. And it allowed me and Alex to say, hey, we're going to bring this to life and take it on full time. And for that, we started in South Philly, and we were hoping to bring our vision to life there, but real estate prices weren't working for us. So that led us on a 2-year journey across the city to find the neighborhood that was willing to build it with us. As 2 white kids from Penn entering into low-income communities across Philly, it wasn't, hey, we have this idea, but do you want to build this together? And that's why we did this as a nonprofit. So there are no owners, that our neighbors are the stakeholders that matter the most. So we took that idea, we went to boardrooms now that we had this prize in the cloud of the university behind us, and M&T Bank came in with a major, major donation that allowed us to purchase a building. So we bought a building on 60th Street in Southwest Philadelphia with our first donation and have since then been fundraising and proving also that this is a sustainable model so that we could also get a loan as well. So we now have a $900,000 construction loan. We've raised a little bit over 1.3 million to date. We're still working on that. So please, if you're listening to this, please donate as well. But really proving by listening that this is something that can work. So first thing we listen to is the loan committee say no, that you as a startup nonprofit don't qualify for a loan. That even with this whole really cool and new innovative way with SNAP, we don't believe in your purchasing power of your neighbors. And it was listening to that and saying, okay, well, What if we incorporated our healthcare system? What if we started paying for food the way we pay for pills? That food can be reimbursed through some really cool waivers. So incorporating that as well. And just coming back to authentic listening, the persistence. I think we at Phi Gamma Delta, us Fijis, have a real good tagline of persistence and determination are omnipotent alone. That those are the two things that every day we strive for. And with that, we've gotten some really, really good press. We had a viral Inquirer article in 2023 that had 16 million views overnight. It was the most viewed Inquirer article of the year. And really from that moment onwards, it was a vision built on the block to one that the whole country is looking at. So we got approval from the USDA, the FNS Retail Policy Division. We got support from both sides of the aisle on the ag GOP and Senate Democrat side of government. And really just our federal government, our state government, our city government is all bought in on this, but really most importantly, so are our neighbors. So we're bringing that vision to life. We're constantly fundraising. We're right now in the middle of this $2 million construction project. And we're expected to open in about 6 months as construction winds down these next 3-4 months.
Yeah, that's crazy. Listening, it's crazy in the sense that it's almost like ingredients, right? You're pulling a little bit from traditional banks. You're trying to pull out the nuances of how you can make this happen with the government and all these different entities and these programs. And that is very difficult. And you guys have done a very good job of it. But conceptually, it's pretty basic, right? Like you can buy soda pop and Skittles, but you can't provide nutritious food in food deserts, right? So, I mean, it's amazing that you navigated the government entities. That would be one ingredient. And then how do you have the funding and the support would be another agreement on the national and local levels. It's pretty amazing. So without question, we'll make sure we know how people can help support and donate. Specific to the building, right? Paint a picture of what that looks like, right? Because I think some of our audience, out west where I am right now, you go to the grocery store and you pull into a parking lot and it's a very large grocery. But in larger cities like Philadelphia and New York, it's all about cornerstones, right? Or stores. Paint a
Yep.
picture of what your building looks like and what's going to
Yeah.
happen inside of it, right? That would be kind of cool for the audience.
So we bought a building on the end of the 60th Street quarter in Southwest Philadelphia, which, back in the 60s and 70s, you had, think about your butcher shop, your flower shop, your produce shop, your barbers, you had it all. But really for the last 40 years, it's been a derelict quarter, empty buildings, boarded up houses, really just, what's been plaguing a lot of our American cities across the country and even, rural areas as well. This is not something new for, this country. And with that, mega, grocery stores are really the norm, but localized food isn't. So the only access point of nutrition in most of these low-income neighborhoods, and even in rural areas like the Dollar General, it's the corner store. And they're selling chips and soda for SNAP benefits, really. And it was there, we found this building, which was just screaming our name the whole time. The address is my birthday. We found a Bible in the wall, actually opened right to a page saying, we want to restore, the Lord said, I will restore you unto health and heal your wounds. It's like, this is what we're doing. And so many weird moments where we had another property that a building flooded and ruined the deal about a week before we were supposed to sign on it, all for us to end up here. And this is a derelict building, 100 years old, and we were giving it its full renovation. So the front half, I actually have a picture here I can show you. That's what it looks like today. The front half is going to be the corner store. Think of your typical kind of grocery market, but very small, about 800, 900 square feet, with fridges that have those meal kits ingredients. We'll also sell just raw ingredients and smoothies. Think breakfast, lunch, dinner, after school specials, but everything is raw and uncooked for the most part. And then you walk outside, you walk right back in to the next store. And this is, separate premises, unit A versus unit B, and is a workforce development training kitchen with a window. And you walk in and you trade in your ingredients and they hand you, kind of think Chipotle style, they scoop it that way, the corresponding hot meal, and yours will then go to a future batch. And the whole second floor is just community space, that knowing that if we're bringing people together through the daily rituals of food, we can also have 365 days of programming, whether it's other organizations coming in and hosting cooking classes, nutrition education, financial literacy, or even just, an old head on the block who has 12 kids who listen to him. Here's free space for you to come and come together through the daily rituals of food. So as much as, we're focused on nutritional justice and health equity, knowing that, the zip code we're working in has the highest rates of hypertension and diabetes. About 50% of our neighbors have type 2 diabetes in our zip code. That it is also about health equity, but it's really about bringing people together. So it's a 100-year-old building. It was under all kinds of violation when we bought it, but it was the right price and it was the right place for us. And we're in the process now of where we're putting on our paint, we're putting in our electrical, we're putting in our plumbing, and we're bringing back what was this, derelict building into a new hub of community. And really for us, early days, a lot of funders were asking, why do a physical infrastructure, brick and mortar? That's really expensive, especially for your first one. But for us, it was, we're serving communities that have been promised so much and given so little. So it was, hey, we are here, we're going to be persistent, and we aren't going anywhere. So we're going to buy this building. We're going to transform, we're going to put that financial and investment into your community, and we're not going anywhere. We could have done 2 food trucks, same model, but that doesn't really show community. It doesn't show we're here, and it doesn't feel like something that's going to transform the neighborhood. And I'll tell you a story. When we first arrived, again, 2 white kids out of Penn, and we just show up on the block. The block captain, our ward leader, Miss Lisa, she pretty much just screams at me in the street, like, "What are you doing here?" Because we were just going door to door and chatting with people. And I knocked on, one of our neighbors, Miss Thelma, who's 89 years old. She's lived on the block her whole life. And she's so kind. She lets me into her house. But obviously, Miss Lisa's looking out for her. And she's like, "Do not let strangers into your home, Miss Thelma." And she yells at us, "What are you doing?" And there was a lot of fear when we first arrived. That it was a very violent summer in West Philly, a lot of shootings, a lot of violence, just coming out of the pandemic, not a lot of community centered approaches. And people, rightfully so, were wary of what we were doing. And, over time, we showed up every week. We started running a food pantry down the block. We volunteered our time. We became that persistent presence. And now Miss Lisa is the head of the Resin Action Committee for us, she's our leading advisor. She's helping us develop our curriculum. She's doing menu tastings, and she's also, marketing the store. And just to show that over time, being persistent, which I think, again, a big word here, is the key piece. And she's now a full part of this journey, and the key piece to this journey. And just that's where we're at today, and that's where we're going. It's really doing those things together.
Terrific. Great story. That's hearing how you necessarily weren't welcome, right? But the persistence paid off, and now some of the largest skeptics, right, are engaged. And the other piece that I didn't wasn't aware of is the community center on the second floor of the facility. I mean, you're right. Coming out of the pandemic and really trying to get, people need connection. And I love the idea that, hey, we could have done some food trucks, but you know what? Food trucks are mobile, and that represents you're going to leave the neighborhood, and then what are you left with, right? So the concept of we're going to build, we're going to stay, we're going to support. That's awesome. I mean, that's true vision that you guys have. That's good. Hey, couple more questions to wind up. What's been the most challenging, right? The story you spoke about was very inspirational. In all of this, right? What's the one thing that's been like, man, that's been the most challenging, and I'm glad we were able to overcome?
Finding that building and finding that community. I mean, that was truly a 2-year journey. To get, I mean, look, construction right now is a pain in the ass. I bet we have some guys who do construction listening to this, and yeah, that's no fun. But really just finding the community and building that was ready for us. That took us literally 2 years to get to. But it was really, like I said, Christmas Eve 2 years ago, we were on version 5 of a lease, ready to sign. And Christmas Eve, we had a freeze in Philadelphia, pipe burst, flooded the whole building. And that was 5 months of work, community outreach, architectural plans. A lot was put into that building for us to be ready to get to that point. And then bam, one night it was all over. And for us, it was the next morning, like, being pretty sad that next morning, but knowing that the next day we had to keep going. And there's been delays. I was hoping we'd be open 2 years ago at this point, but it's taking every step in faith. And so it's just been every day is a hurdle, but overcoming every challenge and just continuing to push forward, knowing that, with the right attitude, with the right partners, with the spirit of collaboration, we can't not succeed. And that's what we're going for.
That's awesome. Hey, two more questions and then we'll wrap things up. But what is what's the vision look like a couple years out? I mean, Philly's perfect. You came in, there's a need, the block that you described and the people you're helping, you're painting a great visual of everything. And maybe the answer is I don't know, but what does this look like 3-4 years down, right? You get things buttoned up and the facility that you're working on is humming on all cylinders. What's the next step for the organization?
Yeah, in these next 6 months, it's opening and launching this first one. But from there, we've had 40 to 50 states after that Inquirer article asked to build a TCG where they're at. And for us, it's to create the framework, the toolkit, the technology systems to allow communities to build them themselves. So for us, 3-4 years, I want to be not just in Philly. I would love to be in DC. I'd love to be in Chicago. I'd love to be in Coatesville, Pennsylvania. I think that we have a model that can allow every community to have a persistent access of farm fresh and healthy ingredients, the pathways towards preparation, and really the community involvement to bring people together. So in 3-4 years, I hope we have 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 TCGs. But right now I'm solely focused on this first one, but we'll get there.
Excellent. Yeah, you've figured out, I don't know if secret sauce is the right word to use, but once you work those nuances out, there's a need, not just in Philadelphia, all over the country. So that's cool. All right. So this is a fraternity podcast, right? So I want to kind of flip it back to the undergraduates and your experience. So if there's undergraduates listening here and they're like, I have a passion about this, or I want to be impactful in this aspect of my life, what advice would you give to turning a passion into reality?
Yeah, I have a few. The first and most important one is listening. If I didn't listen, my first idea was, as I was standing there on the corner, was I'm going to open a normal grocery store in this neighborhood because there isn't one. But you talk to any expert in the field, you talk to any professor, you talk to anyone in the food space, there's so many reasons that doesn't work and has failed time over time. So it was listening to neighbors, it was listening to experts, and just, listening to everyone and partners throughout the entire journey that allowed me to create, something that has secret sauce, that it was all of us together. So step one, right? I know you think you have an amazing idea and you might, but listen, ask questions first. And once you have that, the next piece is be persistent. The typical startup founder or just founder in general, if you want to build something, it takes about 5 years before you get to the point where you want to be. And I think I'm very much on that timeline. I'm on year 4 and we're about 6 months away from opening the location. So, this vision that came to be when I was an undergrad is now coming into that 5th year. So be persistent. Take every day at a time. Take care of yourself. It's a marathon, not a sprint, but never give up. And I think, if you listen, you're on the right path. Being persistent is the big piece. And the last one is just doing it together. Collaboration is a huge piece. I think as brothers, whether through pledging or just in that college experience, you're taught that this is one, not for college days alone, but two, that you are brothers for a reason. You're here to work together, to collaborate, to succeed together. So take those lessons of pledging, take those lessons from the Purple Pilgrim, take those lessons of just, creating community and continue to create that community, beyond college and rely on your network. So, my brothers were still young. I'm only 24. So some of them are beginning to make money and their first donations are to the Community Grocer. And for those who aren't, they're still cheering me on from the sidelines and just building community and relying upon the pieces of collaboration. So those 3 pieces I would say are, if you want to start something, if you want to just, make the world a better place, start with listening, be persistent, and then collaborate with others.
That's excellent advice. That's a snapshot of what our fraternity is about in some degrees with our values, right? When somebody says, "What's this all about?" I'm just gonna jump right to that section of this interview and say, "Listen to Eli. He's got it down."
Perfect.
Well, yeah, Eli, we're definitely going to have a link so people know how to contribute, know how to get in touch with you. And if there's brothers or anybody out there that has questions about how do I do this, they'll be able to track you down, and we can't wait to see. I'm personally going to reach out to you again in like 6 months and see how things are going, and we look forward to that. So thank you so much for joining us today. This has really been a great conversation, and your efforts are just incredibly impressive. And I'm glad that I can call you a brother in the fraternity. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Doug. Yeah, make sure to follow us. Check out our website, thecommunitygrocer.org, and just glad to be here and, be persistent.
There you go. Hey, and I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us today on the banks. We look forward to seeing you all again on our next episodes. And we'll continue to meet new brothers and share new and amazing stories. So until next time, mighty proud to be a Fiji.
Proud to be.